This critique is looking at a video about Trisha Paytas' response to Colleen Ballinger's podcast appearance. It's really about accountability, or the lack of it, for everything from intimate photos to manipulating clips of Adam McIntyre. So let's dive right in. Okay, so right off the bat, a major theme here is clearly the frustration with Colleen Ballinger. I mean, this pervasive lack of accountability across so many different...
Yes.
It feels like you're trying to prove this really big pattern, from the Trisha photos to everything with Adam McIntyre. But the way it's presented now feels a little fractured.
That's a really good word for it, fractured. I think the core issue, and maybe the weakness, is that it's trying to cover all the drama points at the same time. You've got the PR strategy, the Ned Fulmer comparison, Trisha's personal story, Adam's situation, and the argument gets a little bit diffused. The narrative it jumps around. 1 minute we're hearing about Trisha's voice memo trauma, which is incredibly heavy, and then the next we're questioning the interviewer's paychecks. That shift, it slows down the momentum.
It really does. It slows down what should be the central point, which is the analysis of Colleen's, intentional manipulation.
Exactly. And while covering everything as comprehensive, I think it ends up diluting the depth. You spend more time recapping events than analyzing the how.
So the suggestion then is to streamline it.
Yeah, streamline it. Establish one single overarching thesis right at the start. Something like Colleen Ballinger's pattern of strategic deniability.
Okay, I like that.
And then you present the incidents, Trisha, Adam, not as separate topics, but as distinct, powerful examples that all prove that one central argument.
That framing makes it so much cleaner. So how do we make sure those two big incidents, the nudes and the clip manipulation, really work as proof of that one thesis? I mean, the video already mentioned she gets away with things and relies on people not checking the proof.
You lean into that. You frame them as just different sides of the same coin, different manifestations of the exact same intent.
Okay.
The intent of relying on people not checking for the proof. So instead of introducing them as separate issues, you could maybe start with a critique of the interviewers, how they created this environment of deniability. And then you dedicate segments to showing how Colleen exploited that.
So Trisha's case becomes an example of deniability through what? Passive deceit? Like just lying and hoping no one ever finds the evidence?
Precisely. And the Adam McIntyre situation is deniability through active manipulation. You have to explicitly tie her editing that lingerie clip, claiming Adam hounded her when she was the one who initiated it.
Right.
You tie that directly back to her sharing Trisha's nudes. In both cases, the underlying goal was identical. She was counting on people not checking transcripts, not looking at old receipts, and just focusing on the outward appearance of things instead of her actual guilt.
That's a much more powerful connection. It really elevates the whole thing from just reporting on a scandal to a detailed breakdown of a rhetorical strategy.
Yes, it creates immediate logical weight. The viewer isn't scrambling anymore. They're just watching two case studies prove one very strong claim. That focus is what gives it impact.
Okay, let's move on to the second point. The material does a really, really strong job of showing the personal betrayal Trisha felt. I mean, finding out a friend, co-host, another mother was holding viewing parties with your intimate photos, it's just potent stuff.
It is. It absolutely is. But I think the weakness here is that right after establishing this intense personal trauma, calling it heartbreaking, shocking, all of that, the discussion pivots really fast.
To the interviewers.
To the interviewers, yeah. To these generalized theories about Raven and Miranda and this orchestrated PR comeback.
I can kind of see why a creator would do that, though. I mean, audiences get really into analyzing the PR machine, the whole spectacle of it. If you don't talk about that, are you missing the conversation?
That's a fair question, and it's a balance for sure. But I think here that pivot lessens the impact of the most important piece of material you have.
The personal account.
The direct personal victim account. Yeah, the gravity of that betrayal, the fact that this was going on for years while they were friends, making a podcast together, that is so uniquely powerful. And you undercut that power when you move away from the victim's experience to speculate about whether someone got paid.
So the suggestion isn't to just ignore the interviewers, but to make sure the emotional anchor of the piece stays with Trisha's story and how Colleen reacted to it.
Exactly. You anchor the whole discussion in the high stakes of that relationship, of that betrayal. Use the specific, unique details of what Trisha went through to analyze Colleen's motives, not the interviewer's motives.
So it's less about were the interviewers hired and much more about why did Colleen choose this specific way to respond when she finally got caught?
Precisely. For example, a concrete way to do this would be to bring up Colleen's reaction immediately after describing the betrayal. Remember those voice notes?
Oh, yeah.
Colleen's attempt to sort of psychoanalyze Trisha and pull her back in, all because she didn't want the business venture, the podcast, to fail.
That detail is so telling.
Use it. Use it to show that the trauma was compounded by Colleen prioritizing her own brand, her business, over Trisha's actual well-being. It proves her motives were completely transactional.
Which is a much stronger analytical point than just guessing about someone's bank account. It highlights how self-serving her actions were.
And to take that even further, you can analyze what wasn't said. Focus on the fact that Colleen chose to completely ignore the nudes incident in her public apology. We know she apologized privately, but her public silence is a huge rhetorical choice. It's proof of her selective accountability. It's all self-preservation. That omission tells the audience everything they need to know.
That's a great point. Analyzing the silence. Okay, so let's get into the third major area here, which is dissecting rhetorical failure. This is about Colleen's pattern of avoiding a real apology. We see her frame her wrongdoing as a virtue or just, a mistake of context.
The comedy that aged poorly line.
Right. Or the I'm a mom now excuse, which is a big one.
Yeah, I can see what the video is going for here, but I think we can strengthen this argument quite a bit. The material is good at identifying that she's allergic to apologize. It points out the excuses, like the part of my brain was damaged thing, or I'm sorry if he felt upset.
But
the weakness is that it mostly just expresses frustration with the excuses. It doesn't really dissect them structurally.
So it's more about calling her behavior ridiculous instead of systematically showing why it's so manipulative.
Exactly that. Yes. To get that analytical rigor, the suggestion is to incorporate a much more in-depth rhetorical analysis of the specific language she uses. You have to show the audience how her positive spin on things, like claiming she was just very giving to my fans, is actually a classic technique to shift responsibility.
She's reframing bad behavior as being a victim of her own generosity. That is textbook deflection.
It is.
So how do we provide that actionable analysis? How do we get beyond just saying it's bad and into specific linguistic examples?
Okay, so first you have to analyze the conditional apology. When she's talking about Adam McIntyre, she says, I'm sorry if he felt upset by that. We need to really break down the inadequacy of that language.
The conditional if. It's classic. It lets her acknowledge a feeling without ever accepting responsibility for the action that caused it.
That's it. So you contrast that with what an actual actionable apology would sound like. Something like, I'm sorry for allowing him to be harassed.
Or, I'm sorry for initiating an inappropriate conversation.
Yeah, that sharp distinction between acknowledging a feeling and accepting responsibility is such a powerful thing to highlight for the audience.
I agree. That's very sharp. What about the way she talks about the victims themselves? Her word choices?
That's the second point. You have to highlight the manipulation in her terminology. She very deliberately uses phrases like underaged man or younger audience
instead of the correct word, which is child or minor.
Right. And you need to explain that this isn't an accident. It's a calculated PR move to soften the power dynamic. By saying underaged man, she's trying to imply some kind of maturity to avoid acknowledging the core issue, that a child cannot give you permission.
It's an attempt to control the perception of the dynamic and minimize her own authority in the situation.
Dissect that without it just sounding like a moral judgment.
That's a tricky one.
We analyze it as a structural manipulation. She says she's learned and grown as a mom, but the material correctly points out she was a mom when all this was happening.
When the group chats were going on, when she was sending the photos, right.
So by analyzing this not as just a lie, but as a form of emotional manipulation, the critique is so much sharper.
She's using a socially respected role, being a mother, to deflect from actions she committed while in that very role. That self-contradiction is where the analysis is.
That's the gold mine. She's using the emotional currency of motherhood to demand grace, while at the same time undermining the trust that's supposed to come with that role. It shows the audience exactly how she tried to weaponize her personal life to escape accountability.
This whole approach really shifts the critique from just reporting what she said to revealing how she was trying to control the narrative with these specific tactics.
And by making those shifts, the video becomes less of a drama summary
and more of a really targeted breakdown of strategic failure.
Okay, so to summarize, there are 3 key opportunities here to really maximize the impact of this critique. First, by streamlining the structure around that one central thesis of strategic deniability. The different examples, like the nudes and the clip manipulation, they become much more potent proofs of that single pattern.
Second, by really anchoring the analysis in Trisha's personal trauma, using those specific details of the betrayal, like the co-host relationship and the voice notes, the significance is just so much more amplified, and it avoids getting lost in speculation.
And finally, by moving past just being frustrated and into a really focused rhetorical analysis of Colleen's language, specifically her use of those passive apologies, the semantic shifts away from words like child, and that manipulative motherhood shield, the material just paints a much more robust and logical quality.
Absolutely. Those shifts will sharpen the focus and, I think, increase the overall impact of the video exponentially.
We encourage you to incorporate these suggestions and submit your revised work back to the critique for further feedback.